All right, all right, all right. Hey, what's up? It's your girl Nique, and you're tuned in to Nique at Night. And tonight, I'm going to be going over one or maybe all of the students that testified on Saturday's session of the Karmelo Anthony trial. Now, one of the students named Eddie Parra, I'm going to skip to his first because I know there's a lot of people who want to hear specifically what Eddie had to say. So I'm going to go over the testimony a little bit out of order, just so that the people who want to hear Eddie Parr's testimony can hear it. And then I'll go to the rest of the testimony that I did not go over yet on this channel. Now, they have reached a verdict in this case. Karmelo Anthony was found guilty of murder, the top charge. He was not convicted of the lesser charge. And he was sentenced to 35 years, where he can be eligible for parole in 17 and a half years. Now, as you guys know, or some of you guys may not know, I was in the courthouse every single day to listen to the testimony, look at the jurors, and give what I felt about what was happening. I did not go to the closing arguments. That's the only time that I was not in the courtroom due to safety reasons. But every other day of this trial, I was there from the voir dire. I was there every single day listening to every single thing and jotting down as many notes as I could. When it got to Eddie Parr's testimony, it was a lot going on that I didn't end up reading out what I had written down, but we're going to get into it. But before I get into it, there is some weirdo that is using my video where I was crying at the courthouse, and they're titling it as if that's Karmelo Anthony's mother reacting to the verdict. The internet is a sick place where a person would be so thirsty for clicks that you would use my moment and put a title and make people think that my reaction to being targeted and to be a part of these white supremacists trying to intimidate, like using my moment to like flip it and try to make it seem like it was Karmelo Anthony's mom's reaction to the verdict is sick. Karmelo Anthony's mother and father, they never were through the parking lot. They always went through a special entrance in and out. So people are disgusting, like literally disgusting. And I'm going to try and see how I can get those posts removed and struck because it's diabolical. Now, Saturday was court, and it was June 6th. It was the official day 5 of the Karmelo Anthony trial, but I think it was day 3 of like actual testimony. But we're going to get into it. So a lot of the people wanted to know about Eddie Parr. What did he say? You know, even though we know that the verdict was guilty, he was the common denominator between Austin Metcalf and Karmelo Anthony, and the reason why Karmelo Anthony was underneath that tent. So I wrote down all of the things that I could. Now, just a disclaimer, this is not a transcript. When I'm in court, all I have is a pen and a pad. So a lot of times I will try to write exactly what they said. And then sometimes I will write a summary of what they said. Like, let's say somebody says, okay, he went to the store and then he walked down the street. And then once he walked down the street, he turned left, right, and then he drove to his mama's house. I might shorten it and say he walked down the street, he turned left. Like, it'll be a shortened version, but still with the meat and potatoes of it. You get what I'm saying? So with that disclaimer in mind, in my notes in hand, we're going to go over everything. So his name is Eddie Parr, and his name is Edwin Parr, but he goes by Eddie. Now, for each of the people that were on the witness stand, I gave like a little description. For his description, because people were like, what does he look like? for his description, I put black boy / mixed. But his mother was in the courtroom, and I was like, I said, his mama look Asian, but he look like a mixed black boy. You know, that's what he looks like. Now, if he's just like Pacific Islander, it's a possibility, but he had an afro. Like his hair was in a mixed race texture, but it was an afro. And he was like a scrawny little whatever. Anyways, so they start off by asking him background about himself. They wanted to know about him. And then they said, like, as it pertained to track, that day it was his 3rd year on the track team. He knew Austin and Hunter. Him and Austin were close, and Austin was like a brother to him. He also knew Melo because he is the boyfriend or ex-boyfriend of a family friend. Melo was somebody he knew, would say hi to, but he wasn't close with. Austin was his friend. Okay, so they made the distinction right away that his loyalty was with Austin. Okay, his loyalty was with Austin, and it was not with Melo, even though Melo has spent quite a significant amount of time around him. And I'm wondering, like, you have all of this loyalty, which is fine. Pick wherever you want to let the chips may be, whatever. But I wonder if you spent as much time as Karmelo Anthony spent in your home. Like, did the Metcalfs welcome you in their home? Now, I know that they put on a performance in the courtroom to make it look like, you know, they strategically brung in black boys to be on their side in the back. Now, the little black young man that was in court, he was nice. So it's no shade to him. He was very nice. He was respectful. But I don't know, I just felt like it was just strategic, you know, like, let's have some of his friends come in, but like, let's not make them all white. Let's, you know, I don't know. Like, again, and it's no shade to the black boy that was in court. He was such a sweetheart. I just be feeling like everything is some type of thing. But anyways, back to the subject at hand. So he tried to immediately off the bat, or the prosecution wanted to immediately off the bat establish that he don't really fuck with Melo like that. Like, I knew him. I wasn't that close to him, but Austin was close to me, and he was like a brother to me. He says since the murder, he noticed, let's see. So they wanted to know, like, before the stabbing, what happened. And he said that Melo had, he noticed Melo and dapped him up. And they wanted to know, like, where were you guys positioned at? Like, where were you seated? He said towards the back of the tent. And what did you guys talk about? Like, did you talk about anything? He said, they just said hi to each other. That's it. He was trying to say, like, they had no conversation. They didn't talk. They just dapped, and he didn't really talk to him because he was trying to minimize his relationship with Karmelo Anthony. And then they wanted to know, like, what was the vibe? What did you think about him being under your tent? He said it was weird. He was under their tent. He said it was weird that he was under their tent because everyone else went to their own tent. And they wanted to know, like, what did you call him? They said he called him Melo. And he said that he didn't talk that long. And then Austin entered the picture and said, who are you? Why are you here? And then they wanted to know, okay, well, so when Austin said that, what did Melo say? He said that he doesn't remember what Melo said. But Austin said, who are you? You got to get out of our tent. Melo got mad. He was told to get out. The way he talked was mad a little bit. You got to move. And then I guess he said, Melo responded to Austin, you got to move me. You got to move me. Then he says, you're not going to move me. You're a bitch. Austin said the same thing. Okay. So he said they both were saying the same thing. Like he said, Melo said, you're not going to move me, bitch. You're a bitch. And then he said, Austin said the same thing. And then he said, Austin was getting defensive. And then they wanted to know, like, what type of person was Austin or whatever. And he said, Austin always was leading and protecting us, defending us. Then Melo says, you're going to have to move me. Austin gets up. Melo puts hands on his bag. Thought he was, no, he said Melo put his hand in his bag, and they thought he was just trying to act tough. He said, well, we thought he was just trying to act tough because his hand was in his bag. And then they were like, well, like, what did you think about him putting his, like, what did you think about that? And then he said that, did you expect for somebody to bring a knife to a track meet or something along those lines? And he said, we're at a track meet. I wouldn't expect him to have a knife at a track meet. And then they wanted to know, okay, so after that, like, what did Karmelo Anthony say? He said, touch me and you'll see, or touch me, then trying to provoke him. It says, the way he was talking to Austin, you're going to have to move me. Then Austin puts his hands on him. Then Austin fell back. He tried to move him off his seat with a soft shove. Okay, so as he says that Austin was just trying to move him out of his seat with a soft shove. And then he started to get choked up. And then he says, like, he saw the stabbing happen. And then he started to cry on the stand. So immediately when he started crying, I looked to my left, and the Metcalf family, the mom, she just broke down and crying. Like, she's crying. Then, her boyfriend is like consoling her. It's this whole thing. The jury is watching all of this play out. And one of the jurors, I was looking at her, and I could tell, like, she felt sorry. I can't read her mind, but just her expression, like, she just looked like she felt sorry for the mom. Like, she kept looking over that way, and you could just tell, like, anytime they played the 911 call or showed the body cam or anything like that, like, she was looking like she was fighting hard not to cry. Like, her face was like looking like she was crying, but it was no tears coming down like every single time. So I knew that was one of the jurors that they lost. Then there was a juror that was an older man. He sat in the front, like in the very front row. It's like 3 seats all the way to the end. Anytime the defense would like question a witness or like try to present things, he would always give them like a smug look. Then there was 2 white boys that sat in the back. Like, a lot of people are saying different things about the jury, that some things are true, a lot are not. Number one, it was not an all-white jury. They made sure to have people that were younger on the jury. Like, there were plenty of people on the jury that were young, and that's something that I reported like videos ago. But there was 2 white boys, and you can tell, I was like, they just look like they are like in my mind, like they're not keeping an open mind. Like, I felt like they looked like they saw themselves in Austin. Like, I don't know how to describe it, but when they were listening to the testimony, like, you could just look and you could just tell. That's why I was telling you, I was like, they just look like they could be, I'm like, they don't look like him. They don't look like they could be related to him, but they look like they could be in the same family, or they could be like, and then somebody was like, oh, like they look like they could be his peers. I was like, yeah, like they look like they can see themselves in Austin. That was the best way I can describe them. It was 2 young white males towards the back, and the rest of the jury, I could not really get a read. There was another older white woman who you could tell she was team, or not, I don't want to say teams, but she was very sympathetic to the victim. She always would look, like she was about to cry too. The other ones, like I said, it was hard to get a read on it, but I knew that as the evidence was coming in and how it was coming in, that it wasn't looking good. But I did not think that it was going to be murder 1. I thought that it was going to definitely be manslaughter. Now, Let's get back into the evidence. I mean, the presentation of his testimony that we saw. So, they wanted to know, like, if Hunter was a part of it, right? Because if some of you guys know, or some of you guys may not know, Hunter Metcalf did an interview right after this incident, and he admitted that he started talking to Karmelo, and he was like the one that started it, but Austin finished it. Now, when all the kids got on the stand, they were all given different versions of events, whether Hunter was involved or not. Most of them said Hunter was not involved. Most of them said that he said nothing. Most of them said he absolutely said nothing to Karmelo, absolutely wasn't involved. And then there was like a few that said, well, he reacted after the stabbing, or like one or two may have said that Hunter said something to him first. But majority of them, none of their story matched Hunter, his own account of him saying that he said something to Karmelo. So in my opinion, that means that the students were liars. It's not like, and I've seen legal experts talking, and they were basically saying like, oh, it's completely normal for several people to have variation of the story because they experienced the event in a different way. And I get that. Like, there's certain things that you remember and certain things that you don't. But you're going to remember if Hunter said something to Karmelo first, no matter what version of it that you remember, you're going to remember, hey, one twin spoke and then the other one started speaking. Like, you're going to, like, that's, like, you might like miss small details like the logo on a shirt, or you know what I mean? But you know if somebody said something and then didn't. So let's go back. Somebody said, don't forget Paul. Paul, I gotta keep reading to see if he comes up in Eddie's testimony. He did come up in other people's testimony, but let's keep going. So they wanted to know if Hunter was a part of it. And this is when he said that Hunter was a part of it and he was backing his brother Austin up. Hunter said, you don't have nothing in there. Don't act like you got something in there, like Austin as well. So Eddie admits, because after all of the people who were saying Hunter wasn't involved, Eddie admitted that both Hunter and Austin were both saying something to Karmelo. Like, Hunter was saying, you ain't got nothing in that bag. And so was Austin. He said, Austin was standing on, like, only because they wanted to know, like, okay, was Karmelo sitting down? Was he standing up? Were there other kids standing up? Was there like a group of kids around him? Like, they wanted to get him to explain what was going on. And they said only Austin was standing up. Says that they didn't crowd around or surround Melo. Just Austin and Hunter making comments before he had his hand in his bag. Thought it was just, they all thought it was just talk. Says he pulled out his phone but didn't record. So he says Hunter and Austin are both saying stuff to Karmelo. We didn't crowd around him, but none of us believed he really had nothing in the bag. While all of this stuff is escalating, he pulls out his phone to pretend like he's recording. He gets out his phone and he's laughing and, you know, all of that. And he himself also is telling Karmelo that he ain't got nothing in the bag. He's pretending to record, etc. So it says, once Melo put his hand in the bag, they thought it was just talk. Says he put out his phone but didn't record. And then they was like, okay, so if you didn't record the fight, I mean, not like the push or whatever, why did you pull out your phone? He said that he did that because he thought it was funny. Can you imagine? Somebody that you have been kicking it with for the last few months, y'all done went on double dates with family members. You got pictures with his grandmother. You've been building relationships with the family. Y'all done went out to play basketball together. You've been in his room. Y'all play guitar. And then his sentiment is when people are coming at you sideways, that is funny. And to pull out his phone and like what? So they then said he thought it was funny. And then they're like, okay, so what happened next? He said Austin falls and Hunter went straight to him. Then Austin pulled up his shirt and he saw the hole. I went to help Austin get up, then ran to get Coach Lou, then ran back where it happened. He saw Coach take off his sweatshirt. Coaches was pulling him back after he tried to jump the bleachers. He saw Melo run down. The bleachers would he said he was angry with Melo. Coach said, you said that was my brother. That was my brother. Was that you? So basically what they were asking him was, in the body cam footage, you can hear a kid say, that was my brother. That was my brother. But you couldn't really, like, you know, he flashed across the screen. And they were asking if that was him in the video saying that. And they said, yes, sir. Talking about Austin. They had him on the ground. So we don't try and get, they had Eddie on the ground so that he didn't try and get up. Then afterwards, they walked him and Hunter to the paramedics. After that, then cops came and asked him questions. Hunter and him went to the same locker room. There, he talked to a police officer. The officer went through his phone to check his phone and only sent, so the officer went through his phone and then they're like, so what did you send? Like, what was in your phone? And then he said that he only sent a Snapchat after to Alyssa. So he didn't record, but around that same time, he only sent a Snapchat to Alyssa. Now, it was Alyssa phone checked. They didn't even do a thorough check on his phone, so you know that they ain't check Alyssa phone to see what was sent to her. Anyway, so they wanted to know, blah, blah, blah. He said, I said Austin got stabbed. That's what he claims that he sent to Alyssa. And then they wanted to know, like, isn't it weird, like, that he had a weapon? He said no one thought he had a weapon. Eddie said that he called his bluff. And Eddie also, okay, so mind you, Eddie is saying Hunter is telling Karmelo he ain't got nothing in his bag. And Austin was also telling Karmelo he ain't got nothing in his bag when he put his hand in his bag. Eddie said that he also joined in on that. And he said that sarcastically, he was saying, oh, yeah, like, oh, yeah. Until the fact of him, Karmelo, having something in his bag. So I said he egged the whole thing on. I said Eddie was the true instigator. So that's like the note that I wrote as I was listening to his testimony. I'm like, even though Austin said something first, him not saying anything, him knowing that that was his friend, and Karmelo being betrayed by him in that way and them coming at him like that all in that time, I said he was the one that rose the temperature. Because if I'm going to somebody that I think is cool and you turn on me and I done been in your house, I done like chill with your family, I'm taking pictures with your grandmother, I'm dating your cousin, we never had a falling out, we never had no issues, that also raises the temperature. Like nobody brung that out in the case, but I feel like that's something that I would have wanted the lawyer to explore. But that's my thinking, like, how much rage would you have? It's like, Austin's coming at me sideways. This bitch ass nigga ain't saying shit. And he knows that I came over here to dab him up and he ain't saying not one word. And instead, he's actually joining in on them coming at me, and while Karmelo Anthony's hand is in his bag, Eddie's like, oh yeah, like sarcastically, like, you ain't really got nothing. So it's like, how can Karmelo be provoking them if Eddie is joining in on saying he ain't got nothing in the bag, calling his bluff, as Eddie said? Austin's calling his bluff, and there was other students that also were joining in on it. Other students had said exactly how many of them, but it was about, I would have to count. It was a lot of them. And so he wanted to know who was in the wrong that day. That's what the prosecution wanted to know, like, who was in the wrong that day. And he said that Melo was in the wrong that day. And then they wanted to know, well, was it self-defense? And he said, no. And then they said, wasn't it like plain and simple murder? And he said, yes, sir. So then it went to the defense, and it was their turn for cross-examination. And he said, you interviewed with Detective Riley? He said, yes. He said, in the interview he had, it was the day of the incident, and they wanted to know, like, how do you know Valeria, which is Karmelo's girlfriend? And then he says his mom and Karmelo's girlfriend's mom are close friends, and he called Karmelo's girlfriend his cousin. And then he said before this, he saw Melo 2 or 3 times through the whole relationship with Valeria. So they're like, what? Like, bring us back to April 2nd at the track meet. Like, what did you hear Karmelo say? He said he heard Melo make comments about them in football and said, y'all are bad. Y'all are terrible. And then they were like, well, like, what was his tone? Like, how did he say it? He said he didn't say it loud, but he said, y'all are bad. Y'all are ass. And then it says, who was he talking to when he said that? And then he says he wasn't talking to anyone. He just said it out the blue. And then so they were like, all right, so when you got there, what was Melo doing? Like, was he sitting down? And then he said Melo was already sitting down before he got there. And so he tried to make it seem like before he got into the tent, Melo was already in the tent. However, other students testified that they were sitting next to Eddie, and when Karmelo came to sit down, they switched seats with another student so that Eddie could get closer to sit with Karmelo. However, Eddie tried to testify that he got to the tent after Karmelo was already there. You know, just lying. So they said, so you don't remember switching seats to sit next to him? And then he said, well, it was a far gap between them. And so they like, then what happened? He said, I noticed him after the insults and dapped him up. So he's saying Karmelo was talking shit about their football team and saying, y'all are ass, y'all are bad, y'all are terrible, or something of that effect. And then after Karmelo said that, he noticed him and he went to go dap him up. And then so they're like, he said he only talked to him with him and Valeria would hang out, or she was with him and asked me to come with them. It only happened 2 to 3 times before. So after that, we went on a lunch break. And then after we came back, they said, so about this 2 to 3 times that you say that you talked to Karmelo, they said, do you remember, they kind of like brung him back, like, let's establish a timeline here. Okay, like, let's establish a timeline of when you guys met and all of the times y'all met. So he said, December 9th, 2023, you exchanged numbers with Melo, right? And you text him and said, good to meet you. Don't treat my cousin wrong. Then you text Melo on December 18th and said, we should go on a 2-man with a girl he was dating at the time. So they wanted to know, like, what's a 2-man? Like, that's when you go like on a double date. And he was saying, yeah, like, you know, they went on a 2-man, you know, which basically was Karmelo and his girl, that was Eddie's play cousin, and Eddie and his girl, like they went on a double date. So he said, all right, so on December 19th, y'all decided to go on a 2-man, or you asked to go on a 2-man. And then wasn't there a party for Karmelo Anthony's girlfriend's mom at your house? So they said, or no, there was a party for Valeria's 50th her mother's 50th birthday. And didn't you and Melo hang out? He said, yeah, we were both there. So then they showed pictures from the party. And in the party, it was his family at the party. And then you saw Melo and Valeria's mom. And then they showed a picture, and then Valeria's mom was like real cozy with Karmelo. Like you could tell that the family like really embraced him. And so then they showed a picture of him and Melo in his room making kissy faces. So he was like, Eddie was sitting in a chair or whatever, and he was going. And then Karmelo was sitting like next to him, and they both were making like kissy faces to the camera, like being goofy, like doing something like that. Then they showed a picture of a time where Eddie invited him, or he was invited to go play basketball with them. So it says after the party, he invited Melo to come play basketball. And then they wanted to know about that. Like, so you like invited him to go play basketball? Like, what's tea? He said it was a family thing. I just asked if he was going because Valeria's dad was going to be there. So he was basically saying, like, oh, I wasn't really trying to invite him like that. Like, Valeria daddy was going to be there. So I just asked if he was going to be there. That's basically what he said. And then they showed the picture where it was all of the family. And then Karmelo was like included, and they were like on a basketball court. And in the picture, it was Eddie, it was Karmelo, it was Valeria's father. It was like all of like like all of the men. Like it was a huge thing. So I wrote a note and I said, the family looks Asian or Filipino. I couldn't really get a read on like what their race was, but their race was like they were not Samoan, because Samoans normally are a little bit, not to stereotype, but they're a little bit like bigger, like and broader. But they didn't look like regular Asian. They look like, I don't know. I'm like, is this Filipino, Pacific Islander? I don't know. It wasn't like, they had a unique Asian look. It wasn't like regular. Like it was like Filipino, or it was like, I don't know. I don't want to guess. It was something in that family. So anyways, so it was a picture of them playing basketball with Melo and the family. So, and then he said after that, they hung out every now and then, also went to a soccer game together. So him and Karmelo played basketball together. They were in his room goofing around, making kissy faces. They were, and the picture of the kissy faces, they're not like making kissy faces at each other. They're making, Cambodian might be it. They might be Cambodian. I don't know. They might be. But it wasn't like I said, it wasn't like, anyways, like what is regular Asian, right? Like y'all get what I'm talking about. Like it wasn't like Chinese or Japanese. It was like Southeast. Anyways, enough of that. So, they said like, okay, so didn't y'all like y'all hung out at a soccer game too? You know, they would hang every now and then, and they went to a soccer game together. So then he like, okay, well, what about January 5th? Didn't you and Melo hang out on January 5th too? He said that Melo came to his house for a backyard camp out. And then he don't remember. So the defense is like, didn't Melo come to your house on January 5th and y'all did roasted marshmallows together in the backyard? I don't remember that. So then he showed photos of the backyard where they were roasting marshmallows. He showed a picture of Karmelo and Valeria hugged up. So they put a picture, they showed him, and it was a picture of Karmelo and Valeria hugged up. And then now suddenly he remembered this situation where they were roasting marshmallows together. And then I said, then they had a picture of them like actually roasting the marshmallows. So like everybody that was like around the campfire, they all put their sticks in, and it was like a bunch of sticks around, like, with their marshmallows at the tip, like roasting marshmallows. That was kind of like what the picture was. And then they were like, so what about, okay, so you met him on, like, I'm looking at my notes and I'm like, okay, so how many times have they crossed paths? He exchanged phone numbers with him on December 9th. December 18th, he asked to go on a 2-man. December 27th, he's hanging out with at a party with Valeria's mom. Then they showed the pictures of him and making a kissy face. I don't know if this was a separate occasion, the kissy face photo, so I won't count that one. So then they had a time where they was playing basketball together. Then they went to a soccer game together. Then on January 5th, Melo came to his house for a backyard camp out. Then late January 2024, Eddie's grandmother had like a party for Valeria at his house. And then we're just gonna keep going on. I'm tired of like counting fingers here. So that was late January. Then they showed a picture, and it was Eddie's grandmother, Valeria, Melo, and then next to Valeria's mom was Karmelo in a picture, and I put at Eddie's house. Then on February 4th, they hung out again. So there was a disco party at Eddie's house, and everybody was in 70s disco theme. Karmelo, Eddie, all of them were in a group photo of them wearing like disco 70s stuff. So I put then after the disco, then that's when they showed the photo of Melo and him goofing around in his room. And Melo was playing a guitar, and Eddie was just like, they were like rocking out in pictures together. Then they were like, it's fair to say you knew Karmelo more than 2 to 3 times, right? And then he said, well, only like I only know about when Valeria and my family hung out. But wasn't you guys hanging out a couple times a month? He said, yeah. Like, so they wanted to know more about them knowing each other. And then he says, I knew him, but not personally knew him. And then he said, so like, it would be no surprise that he would dap you up, right? And then he says, I mean, we were cool with each other. That's what we would do. Then they wanted to know about the track meet and said, didn't you see Karmelo 10 days before this at another track meet? And then didn't you and Karmelo 10 days prior to the memorial incident, weren't you guys sitting together on the bleachers hanging out? I mean, on the they weren't on the bleachers, they were on a bench together hanging out. And then he says they were sitting what is it? So then they showed a picture of him and Eddie at the track meet where him and Mello was sitting together on a bench talking. Mello was in his gray clothing for his like school colors, and Eddie was in yellow school colors. So you could see two boys had on gray to signal, like, I guess that's their school colors. And then it was like two boys, Eddie and another boy or whatever, they had on like their, like he had on yellow, like their track. And then they were all sitting on the bench together like this, like hanging out, like chilling. So he said, going back to April 2nd, you told Officer Riley you were sitting next to him. On this occasion, he insulted your team. Then you got up and dapped him up. Did you? So he's like, okay. So did you ever tell anyone you knew him? He said, I don't think so, no. So you didn't think to step up and tell people that you knew him? He said, no. When people asked who he was, you didn't feel the need to tell them who he was? He said, didn't feel the need to straighten it out, like didn't feel the need to straighten out the disagreement. And then they said, okay, so what did Karmelo say to Austin? He said, Melo called Austin a bitch, and Austin called Melo a bitch. And then he said, yeah. So it says, Karmelo said, show me I'm a bitch, after Austin called him a bitch. They both were getting angry at that time. After the bitch comment is when he put his hands in his bag. While they were calling each other bitch is when he got his phone out and pretended he recorded. So, okay, so Austin is calling Karmelo a bitch. Carmelo's calling him a bitch. And he's saying, Karmelo is saying basically, let's see. He got his phone out to pretend like he was recording. And so they're like, why pretend to make a video? He said, I was trying to be funny. Well, do you remember another student who asked if you got a picture? Because I guess while they were going to the bus or after the aftermath, another student wanted to know, like, hey, did you get a picture of it? Because he was acting like he was recording. And then he says, yeah, they like asked me if they can get a picture, but my phone was never on. He said, but if you were actually recording, then we would hear everything that was going on. He said, he didn't remember saying Austin knocked him back when he got like up. So I guess there was supposed to have been like when Austin was getting into it with him, he knocked Eddie back. He said he don't remember that. So he said, hey, let me know how this like shove kind of went. Like he wanted him to demonstrate what kind of shove it was or whatever. And then he said everything happened in a split second. So, okay, so when you were acting like you were recording and you showed your phone to the officer, did the officer download your phone, like do a download? And then Eddie said he just looked at it in front of me and gave it back. And then they said, but he didn't look through Instagram. I was like, what? So after that, he was done testifying and they said that he was subject to recall. So that was his whole interaction. I know a lot of people wanted to know what Eddie Parra said, what he did, boop, de, boop, de, boop, de, boop. So that was Eddie Parr. Now, let me go back and read to you guys another one of the boys' testimony. Now, this next witness, he came before Eddie, but now let's get into it. It says I wrote that he's a 17-year-old black kid. He goes to Memorial High School, class of 2027. He's a wide receiver in football and plays track. His coach is Coach Starr. And they got to the stadium that morning by bus. They got searched before going in. So he's saying like they got searched before going in. And then he says the weather was not bad at arrival, but at the end, he was in the tent when this happened. He was looking out to find someone to talk to. He looked back and saw someone he didn't recognize. So he asked his teammates if they knew the guy. Usually, if you are a student or a guest, you have to be on the other side of the. And I couldn't hear what he said. And then he said, Melo was far back too. I identified him first. He had walked down to get ready for his event. And he looked back up, and that's where he saw the commotion. He saw Austin place his hand on Karmelo's shoulder and turn and hear yelling from Austin and Hunter. Austin yelled, "He stabbed me." And Hunter said he got stabbed. Prior, when he was walking down, he heard them not quite arguing, but something was going to build up. It says, I saw Melo before at a different track meet. When he walked past him, he was trying to make him come to do something like, come on, his shoulder. From his distance, he placed his hand firm. Austin motioned first, then Melo responds. You don't expect someone to get stabbed at a track meet or school. So they were like, what do you think about somebody getting stabbed? Da, da, da. He said he wouldn't expect somebody to get stabbed at a track meet. And then he said, da, 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 da. So he said he found Melo to be suspicious because he didn't have on school gear and his hands in his pocket. After the stabbing, he runs up the bleachers and saw Hunter try and get him. He said he saw Melo run to the right of the stadium when Austin got stabbed. He removed his clothing and he saw the cut. So he was in a panic because he didn't know if he would do it to someone else. Hunter went to chase Melo, then went to his brother. Says during it he didn't want to hear Hunter speak. Says nobody surrounded or crowded Melo before the stabbing. Since all of this, he has done some counseling. Says that Melo hit him first. Says Melo wasn't acting in self-defense because threats, lethal force versus non-lethal. So then they went back to the defense and asked him about his statement to the police. The boy said they walked over to the other building to do an interview with cops. So they wanted to know what everybody was doing. Anyway, so let's see, where was I at? Oh man, I don't know where's that. Okay, so then it went to the defense. They wanted to know about his statement that he left to the police. The boy said they got on the bus, then walked over to the other building to do an interview with the cops. So they wanted to know if he saw when Melo arrived. He said he didn't see Melo arrive. He told the detective Melo was gone in their tent. All right, so then they took his police station to him and had him read it. He said, saw him at the bottom of his tent before to say hi to someone. Must have possibly been a time or before that, at another track meet, he tried to have a convo with someone, but it wasn't working. It was either Eddie or Andy. He said that Eddie was shaking his head and not looking his way, but holding up and down. Most likely saw him 10 days before. Let's see. Okay, so he told the detective Hunter popped in to defend Austin during the argument. And then he told the detectives, I see Austin put his hands on his shoulder not to intimidate him. Then he told the defense that it was more of a warning to show actions are louder than words. So that is the testimony of a 17-year-old black kid and the testimony of Eddie Parra. You guys let me know what you think about it. I'll read through the rest of them at another date. So this one I filled up the notepad front, like on the one page, one side. So I'm gonna be getting me some sleep. I can feel myself getting tired, but I know people were interested in what Eddie had to say specifically. Y'all know, or maybe you don't, but NiqueAtNiteMedia is my cash app if anybody wants to donate, enjoy the content, etc. Other than that, I'll talk to y'all later. Bye.